Tonight, Paul Ryan Unchained, preparing for Zuckerberg, and
I love the smell of gold in the morning.
Algerian officials have launched an investigation and declared 3 days of national mourning after the country's deadliest air disaster. More than 250 people were killed today when a military plane crashed into a field west of the capital. The plane was taking off from an air base, and the government says most of the passengers were military personnel and their families.
لقينا يعني الجثث متراكمة يعني ما نتكلموش وش كان الجثث قبل هذه يعني لقينا كارثة يعني كارثة.
At the United Nations Security Council today, the Russian ambassador asked the U.S. not to attack Syria.
И те угрозы, которые вы сейчас произносите в отношении Сирии, должны нас всех чрезвычайно беспокоить.
This morning, President Trump tweeted a warning that U.S. airstrikes on Syria, quote, will be coming in retaliation for a suspected chemical attack on the town of Douma. The World Health Organization is now demanding access to Douma, where it believes 500 people may have been affected and more than 70 people killed. President Trump has ramped up his attacks on special counsel Robert Mueller after an FBI raid on Trump's personal lawyer's office. Now, Republican Senators Tom Tillis and Lindsey Graham are working together with Democratic Senators Chris Coons and Cory Booker to propose the Special Counsel Independence and Integrity Act. Under the bill, only a senior official at the Justice Department could authorize the firing of the special counsel, and only after providing the justification in writing. The bill would also let a fired special counsel ask a judge to review and potentially reverse the termination. Former Speaker of the House John Boehner is joining the board of Acreage Holdings, one of the country's major cannabis companies. While in office, Boehner opposed legalizing marijuana. But in a statement posted on Twitter this morning, he said his thinking on cannabis has evolved and that he'll now be pushing for descheduling the drug to expand access to weed for veterans and people struggling with opioid addiction, a proposal that now stands to make Boehner a lot of money. The ex-speaker will be joined at Acreage by Bill Weld, the former Republican governor of Massachusetts.
The hottest trend for Republicans in Congress these days is leaving Congress. And today, the trend got its first real celebrity endorsement.
The job provides incredible opportunities. But the truth is, it's easy for it to take over everything in your life. That's why today I am announcing that this year will be my last one as a member of the House.
House Speaker Paul Ryan, the leader of the House GOP, is quitting. After little less than 3 years on the top job, Ryan made his name as a fiscal hawk.
For too long, Washington has not been honest with the American people. We've been making empty promises from a government that is going broke.
His biggest achievement is the tax cut bill he got through at the end of last year. But that bill's helping to drive deficits the Congressional Budget Office says will reach $1 trillion by 2020. That'll be the next speaker's problem to solve. The cool kids in the Republicans Leaving Congress Club use their retirements as a chance to become truth tellers. You see these guys, and they're all guys, on TV all the time.
People want to remember the Republican Party as the decent party. And it is not right now.
If you've done nothing wrong, you should want the investigation to be as fulsome and thorough as possible.
You would think he would aspire to be the President of the United States and act like a President of the United States.
Speaker Ryan has had plenty of his own frustrations. The House GOP caucus is a difficult group to corral, and President Trump has been a messaging nightmare pretty much every day of the presidency. So just about every week since Trump was inaugurated, there have been stories about Ryan privately getting annoyed at a presidential tweet, or subtly complaining about the whole situation at a press conference.
Are you talking about this morning's tweet? Yeah, I just saw it a little bit ago. Obviously, I don't see that as an appropriate comment. I think, look, what we're trying to do around here is improve the tone and the civility of the debate, and this obviously doesn't help do that.
As Speaker, Ryan is third in line to the presidency and the face of the mainstream party. So he's got the goods and the megaphone to be the biggest, loudest truth teller in the GOP. Especially now, he doesn't have to worry about being elected or keeping Trump happy. I asked Michael Steele, former top aide to Ryan when he ran for vice president, but whether it's realistic to expect the speaker will cut loose. Corker, Flake, Gowdy, all these guys are leaving Congress.
Right.
If you put them all on a bus, the bus would have the no fucks given tour on the side of it. Is Paul Ryan going to join that bus?
No, I don't think so. I think that he's going to do everything he can to help the House Republican team do as well as possible in the midterms in 2018, and he knows that the best way he can help them is by staying on the team, doing all the things necessary to make sure that there isn't a blue wave in November.
What can we expect Congress to do under Ryan's leadership for the next few months?
Well, I don't think the dynamics change very much on that. I think that you always have to be ready for big emergencies, you always have to be ready for disasters, and there's going to continue to be pressure to get things done on infrastructure and on immigration.
Paul Ryan knows a lot about Congress. He knows a lot about Washington. But it sounds like we're not going to know what he actually thinks for quite a while.
If any sort of Ryan YOLO thing were to happen, and I don't think it will, I think he's been pretty straightforward throughout this process, but I wouldn't see that until after he leaves the House, a new leadership is elected, and we're moving on to the next thing.
Mark Zuckerberg was on the Hill for his second straight day of questioning, this time before members of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Vice News went behind the scenes with the committee's chairman, Representative Greg Walden, as he got ready for the big event.
We prepared a briefing book for you, which includes everything from the memo to recent articles and all the other prep materials you need for the hearing.
What does this day before the hearing look like?
It actually starts before that, weeks before, when an issue evolves, and then we reach out to get a witness. In this case, it's Mark Zuckerberg. And then we begin working about what are the issues we need to delve into, what are the public policy concerns, what are the unanswered questions we want answers to. So what do you think our strongest line of questioning should be?
I think your strongest line of questioning and your first question should ask Mr. Zuckerberg why users in the American public should trust that they can make these changes and actually effectuate them.
Do you trust him to be upfront with you guys tomorrow?
I think the question he has to answer is, does he have a way to earn back the trust of the people who use his platform?
So you don't trust him at this point?
I trust people along the way, but he's got to prove to his consumers, to the people that use his platform, can he earn back their trust?
This is what I saw this morning in the Help Center. You? That's on my Facebook profile. So that means that they took my public profile, my page likes, my birthday, and the current city that I had listed.
And you never agreed to share those data?
Well, so that's the open question. At one point I did have the platform access turned off, but then I do know that I had it turned on at one point. I'm pretty sure it was when my mom wanted to play Words with Friends.
I prefer to have the marketplace exact the punishment, if you will. And in the internet community, nothing moves faster than internet users in terms of disciplining a marketplace. Good?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
If I can get everybody's attention, we'll get started.
Before major hearings, we always get together with our members and kind of walk through run a schedule, what to anticipate, what the purpose of the hearing is, what we're trying to get from it.
The country's watching, and I think the country's really desperate for some answers here.
I do think that we need to be careful that no one grandstands here.
We also want to make sure that we keep in mind these have been some great companies.
They left a lot on the table, the senators that were questioning him today, for you guys to tackle.
This is where the staff has been watching. They will evaluate, look at what hasn't been asked, get clarification on issues they felt weren't fully addressed, and be ready tomorrow. Hearings like this cause entities and corporations to sit up, realize they have a serious matter before them, and I've seen it time and again where they want to clean up their act, they want to get ahead of it, they don't benefit from getting punished by Congress. Did it ever cross your mind that you should be communicating more clearly with users about how Facebook is monetizing their data? I understand that Facebook does not sell user data per se in the traditional sense, but it's also just as true that Facebook's user data is probably the most valuable thing about Facebook.
I can't be clearer on this topic. We don't sell data. That's not how advertising works. And I do think we could probably be doing a clearer job explaining that given the misperceptions that are out there.
Can you manage the issues that are before you, or does Congress need to intercede? I'm going to leave that because I'm over my time. They got a problem on their hands. We have to be understanding, I think, of the challenge they face. They need to understand the obligation they have to the consumers is having this platform and profiting handsomely from it.
Today is the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act, the last major piece of legislation passed during the Civil Rights era. The law promised not only to outlaw housing discrimination, but to use the federal government's power to actively promote fair housing.
Fair housing for all is now a part of the American way of life.
But 5 decades later, residential segregation persists, especially for Black Americans. So why did the Fair Housing Act fail to do what it was designed to do? In part, it's because of how segregation took hold. Take a look at Baltimore, which is a microcosm of the problem. Like most cities, Baltimore today has a largely Black urban center and mostly white suburbs. But Baltimore wasn't always so divided. Segregation really took root in the 1930s, when the federal government concocted a plan to create the suburbs as a way to help working-class families.
All trails led to the promised land, suburbia.
The government subsidized home building, and it insured mortgages, which made them much cheaper. Both Black and white Americans could have benefited from these programs, but government maps drew red lines around Black neighborhoods to mark them as too risky to insure. By 1949, when 1/3 of all home construction was government-assisted, 98% of all insured loans had gone to white people. That meant Black people were mostly stuck in densely populated urban neighborhoods, while the government was helping whites settle in the suburbs. In the 1960s, the civil rights movement in the North set about breaking down the barriers to fair housing. And in the wake of Martin Luther King's assassination, Congress finally passed the Fair Housing Act. But it turned out you couldn't desegregate housing with the stroke of a pen.
If we abolish segregation on buses, the next day people can ride anywhere they want on a bus. But we abolish segregation in neighborhoods, the next day things don't look much different. To pass a law that says, in effect, okay, African Americans, you're now permitted to move to these suburbs, was ineffective because the suburbs were now unaffordable.
Even today, just 40% of Black people live in the suburbs. One tool that's supposed to make it easier for people to live where they want is the Housing Choice Vouchers program, otherwise known as Section 8. The program offers rental subsidies to approximately 2.2 million low-income families. But it can be difficult to transfer a voucher issued by the city to a suburban county, and in most places, landlords don't have to accept them. So Black voucher holders typically end up in minority neighborhoods. In Baltimore, the vouchers are used in what's been called the Black Butterfly. Baltimore, though, has come up with a fair housing program that actually works. 16 years ago, in response to a lawsuit, the city created a new kind of voucher, known as the Thompson voucher. It could only be used in integrated neighborhoods that didn't have many poor people. The program also offered counseling, transportation, and security deposit assistance, and significantly higher subsidies. It was a huge success. Recipients moved from areas that were 80% Black and 33% poor to areas that were 21% Black and 8% poor. But with just 4,300 vouchers, the program only reaches a small fraction of Baltimoreans. And in most of the country, nothing like the Baltimore program exists at all.
We have the evidence that these kinds of programs can move the needle for parents and kids, and so we should act on that knowledge. I just think the big question here is, can we find the resources to improve the existing voucher program?
Don't count on the federal government to help, though. Trump's housing secretary, Ben Carson, has already scaled back efforts to fight discrimination. This January, instead of implementing an Obama-era rule that required cities to actively desegregate, Carson postponed it, effectively killing any chance that it would make a difference.
Five rangers, all in their 20s, were ambushed and killed on Monday at Virunga National Park in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Virunga is home to about a quarter of the world's critically endangered mountain gorillas. Park authorities blamed the murders on the Mai Mai, a violent militia that's been operating in the DRC since the mid-90s. Guarding the park is a dangerous job. Over the past 20 years, 175 rangers have been killed. Monday's attack was the deadliest yet. We met some of Virunga's rangers last year.
There is some people who are cutting trees. So it means that they are cutting trees for just making charcoal.
It's a lucrative business. The charcoal gets sold to the 4 million people who live around the park.
And do you know if the poachers are targeting rangers because they're stopping the charcoal trade?
Yes.
Recently, rangers have been attacked?
Yes. Recently, we have been attacked during the patrol because we was fighting against the charcoal.
But the pillaging of Virunga is just one symptom of the violence that plagues the DRC. The government is locked in a constant struggle with an array of militant groups in the country's east. In the last year alone, the problem has gotten worse. 32 new armed groups have sprung up, bringing the total to 127. So far, 5 million people have been forced from their homes, and more than 13 million people are in desperate need of humanitarian aid, according to the Norwegian Refugee Council. Recently, militant attacks have gotten so bad in North Kivu, where the Virunga Park is, that the DRC's army stepped up operations against the rebels. And the murders earlier this week showed that even for the people working to save the country's endangered wildlife, there's no refuge from the violence.
In 2006, Keith Barron found the largest gold deposit in Ecuador's history and sold his stake for almost $200 million. Now he's back, and he's looking for more.
On paper, Keith Barron is the CEO of a publicly traded company called Arania. In reality, he's an actual gold digger.
Hi, good to see you.
Barron's team of explorers is here in the middle of the Amazon because he spent a decade studying old Spanish maps and documents, which reference two lost cities in the jungle of Ecuador, Logroño and Sevilla de Oro, where the conquistadors mined gold in the 16th century. And Barron thinks the area could still be home to massive gold deposits,
Unfortunately, it's not X marks the spot, and it's not super accurate, so we still have to do the exploration to find the places.
The team spends up to 3 weeks at a time in the jungle, splitting open rocks and gathering samples. They're not expecting to find gold sitting on the surface. They're looking for geological clues that indicate there could be huge amounts of gold underground.
This is what we call elephant country. It's never been explored before, so there's a chance to go and find an elephant-sized deposit.
How much money would that be?
Oh, way in the billions.
Ecuador has a tortured history with foreign companies looking for riches in the Amazon. In the 70s and 80s, oil drilling in the jungle led to water pollution, soil contamination, and deforestation. It culminated in a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against Chevron, which has been bouncing around international courts for more than 2 decades. So Ecuador is being a lot more cautious this time around. After Barron's last discovery in 2006, the country banned all exploration for nearly a decade while it created a formal system for collecting royalties and enforcing regulations.
Las empresas en el Ecuador, por la ley de minería, tienen algunas condiciones que somos bastante estrictos frente a eso. El 80% del personal tiene que ser contratado en el Ecuador y además por normativa ambiental nuestra, por ejemplo, el agua tiene que ser devuelta a su cauce en el mismo estado que se encontró. 0% puede haber contaminación.
Ecuador has licensed land concessions to 27 foreign companies, including Barron's. He pays about $2 million a year for the exclusive right to explore an area more than twice the size of New York City. In return, the country gets 50% of whatever he earns.
El negocio minero se necesita mucho dinero en el inicio de un proyecto y hoy nosotros no tenemos ese recurso y además no tenemos la experiencia. Las cifras mundiales son de que cada 100 proyectos de exploración posiblemente uno termine en mina.
But in the jungle, you need more than just the government's permission. There are indigenous people who live here too.
Do you ever think about the optics and dynamics of this? White man going into indigenous community?
No, I don't think it's like that at all. I mean, I'm not King Leopold going into Belgian Congo. If you don't have social license to operate, you're pretty much not going to operate. I'm in a foreign country, and I have to respect the stakeholders. Hola, ¿cómo estás?
The land Barron is exploring overlaps with the territory of an indigenous people called the Shuar, who've traditionally opposed commercial activity in the Amazon. But a growing number of indigenous leaders have recently changed their mind about people like Barron.
Perfecto. Gracias.
Bienvenido en este pueblo Shuar de las Cascadas.
Ruben Pitiu is one of those leaders. He's the president of Bode, a Shuar organization with almost 20,000 members.
La pobreza es galopante en mi pueblo. Por eso, yo me siento feliz que ustedes hayan llegado para que escuchen de nuestra voz que el pueblo Shuar no está en contra de la minería en el Ecuador.
According to the mining law, 60% of Ecuador's royalties go to local governments. There's currently no guarantee that money ends up in the hands of indigenous communities, but mining can mean jobs for people that desperately need them.
No se preocupa por cómo se afecta la selva a buscar petróleo, buscar oro y otros minerales.
No podemos dañar nuestra selva, pero tampoco podemos morir cuidando la selva en total desigualdad de oportunidades. El pueblo Shuar no puede quedar solamente sentado en la selva.
Necesitan plata.
No, necesitamos involucrarnos en estos procesos.
And foreigners need all the help they can get.
Okay, where are we going now?
Climb up to the side of a waterfall.
Okay.
At this point, the team had seen enough to suspect there was gold in the area. But finding something called buggy quartz could mean they're standing right on top of it.
Whoa, look at that. This is a vuggy quartz, which is like an injection and a sedimentary rock. Can you smell it?
Can I smell it?
I love the smell of gold in the morning.
Well, very well done to find this. Needle in a haystack.
Yeah, it is.
Bloody hell, man.
On Friday, Barron's company announced that this area will likely be the first it's going to drill. The team, meanwhile, is still in the Amazon, hoping to eventually stumble upon whatever's left of the two lost cities, and whatever else is hiding underground.
My favorite thing about the job is actually finding something. The eureka moment, and it's only happened a couple of times in my life, and it would be great to do such a thing again.
That's Vice News Tonight for Wednesday, April 11th.